You know, sometimes during the cold winter months, many of us like to escape to a tropical paradise, get away from the cold and snow. You can include Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who recently went to Jamaica, but his latest vacation is kind of leaving a bit of a bad smell with many Canadians. Now, to talk about this in more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, MPs on the Commons Ethics Committee will also meet on Wednesday to discuss our Prime Minister's latest vacation to the Caribbean. What seems to be the problem?
Well, the problem is that he took an $84,000 vacation. He claimed that it was pre-cleared with the ethics commissioner before he left, or at least his office did. His new House leader made that statement time and again. Oh, don't worry, this was all pre-cleared with the ethics commissioner. And he accepted a gift from a friend, which is allowed. Okay, well, let's back up. The ethics commissioner and his office do not pre-clear vacations. Despite the Prime Minister making that statement, or his office more than once, despite House Leader Steve McKinnon making that statement just after he was sworn in as cabinet minister, the Ethics Commissioner's office has made it clear they don't do that. So there's no such thing as a pre-cleared vacation. Then they pointed myself and others in the media who were asking questions to the section that deals with gifts from friends. And I'm just going to look over at my laptop here for a minute, Hal, and read to you part of that, because it's important. Yes, you're allowed to accept a gift from a friend. It's the friend or relative that's giving you the gift has to pay for it themselves. Can't be something that somebody else pays for. They have to pay for it. Also, it says examples of the types of gift allowed. Examples are gifts or other advantages offered in a personal setting and on a personal occasion, such as a birthday, wedding, anniversary, or retirement. Well, this vacation villa that he stayed at, it's called Frankfurt on Prospect Estate in Jamaica, a former slave plantation. It goes for $7,000 US a night. He was there for 9 nights. That's $84,000 Canadian. I know a lot of wealthy people, Hal. I'm unfortunately not there myself, but I know several wealthy people. None of them give their friends $84,000 birthday gifts. So how can this fall within the parameters that the Act and the guidance from the Ethics Commissioner lays out? I don't think it does on several points. And there's also a question of, is this actually a friend under the definition of the Act? Or is this his father's friend? His late father's friend was Peter Green. Just because you're family friends doesn't mean you always keep in touch. Pierre Trudeau was godfather to one of Peter Green's sons. Sure, my parents have performed that duty as well to people that I knew growing up, but I didn't stay in touch with them to the point where I'd consider them my personal friends here as an adult. So many questions around this, and Trudeau just thinks he can get by through ignoring it while not telling the truth in his public statements.
Brian, it's a new year and another new poll which shows that the Trudeau Liberals are falling yet again in popularity. The federal Tories under Pierre Poilievre also continue to rise in popularity. Now, you say it may have something to do with Trudeau's latest getaway?
Well, that was one of the ideas put forward by David Coletto, the CEO of Abacus Data, who put out this poll. If you remember back to mid-December, Abacus did a poll that showed, well, maybe the gap was closing a little bit. Remember, we were seeing polls with a 13, 14, 15. One Nanos poll had a 19-point lead for the Conservatives. And in mid-December, Abacus did a poll, and it was only 10. I mean, that's still double digits. That's still majority territory and decimation for the Liberals. But he had them at 37% for the Conservatives, 27% for the Liberals. And the Liberals kept saying, see, we told you Pierre Poilievre had a bad week. They don't, Canadians are seeing through him now. Latest poll, 41% for the Conservatives and Poilievre nationally, 24% for the Liberals. Bad news for the Liberals and good news for the Conservatives. The Liberals don't lead in a single jurisdiction in this country. And the Conservatives, they're leading everywhere but Quebec. They also dominate every age and demographic group. Well ahead among women, well ahead among men, 18 to 29-year-olds they're leading. They lead every age group. And the best that Trudeau does is about 30% of people over the age of 60 still say they support him. And Poilievre is still winning in that. I think over 40% in that age group saying they support him. So a very good poll for the Conservatives to start the year, very bad one for the Liberals.
So the federal election is coming up next year, Brian. What will be key for Pierre Poilievre to maintain his popularity and his party's popularity? Is it the continue the axe the tax course, which we're seeing as he tours Northern Ontario?
Well, I'm not sure that you can stay on that one topic from now until October 2025 if we go that far. And, I think, we'll see if Justin Trudeau goes that far. I keep saying if he can tie Poilievre to Donald Trump, he'll try and go in 2024 before the US election. But, Poilievre has to make sure that he puts forward both criticisms of the government, but also his own ideas. The Liberals keep trying to say, well, Poilievre has no plan. He does have a plan if you're listening, and he's put forward a housing plan. He's put forward plans on the debt and government spending, on bringing down inflation. Just because the Trudeau Liberals don't like them doesn't mean there is no plan. So they don't really have a good line of attack. So he's got to stay positive because people like voting for a positive leader. Also putting forward realistic criticism of the government. Canadians, they're fed up with the Trudeau Liberals right now. Poilievre has to make sure he doesn't give them a reason to go back to the Trudeau Liberals. Every government will eventually outwear its welcome unless there's renewal. Justin Trudeau's showing no signs of stepping down to allow for party renewal and a new leader. So if it's him versus Poilievre, then it's going to come down to which one do Canadians trust more?
Brian, the latest polls also show that the federal NDP is hurting, along with the popularity of their leader, Jagmeet Singh. Now, depending upon results next year, could you see him maybe potentially stepping down as leader after the next election?
Well, the NDP, they don't like success. Tom Mulcair gave them their second best effort ever, and they booted him after the 2015 election. Jagmeet Singh came in. He performed worse than Mulcair did. They kept him around. He's performed worse in the 2019 and the 2021 elections. They've kept him around. They think that they're doing great right now. They're not. They're doing horribly. They're around where they were in the last election. So despite joining in this coalition and saying they're getting all these great benefits for Canadians, which I would question whether they actually are getting great benefits for Canadians, but it's not helping the NDP when it comes to popular support. So it's tough for me to read into the mind of what the NDP is going to do. I would say that they should have gotten a new leader by now, but they seem to prefer a losing leader to a successful one.
Now, you've been saying for quite some time that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau does not want to campaign against Pierre Poilievre, but instead against Donald Trump. Now, last night, Trump won the Iowa caucuses quite handily, but according to Angus Reid, Brian, most Canadians really don't like the former U.S. president. So is this maybe a good strategy by the Trudeau Liberals?
I'm not sure I would call it a good strategy, but it seems to be all that the Trudeau Liberals have right now. Uh, you know, they kept using, before the Christmas break, they kept using the term MAGA, Make America Great Again. They kept calling Poilievre and the Conservatives the MAGA Conservatives. And I said, okay, well, I can't check every time that they've used it in a news conference. I don't have access to every single public appearance, but we do have Hansard, the official record of Parliament. And I went back to December 2015 when Trump first announced he was going to run for the Republican nomination in the 2016 election. And between December 2015 and December 2023, MAGA was used 57 times in total. 55 of them were between September and December, but 44 of them were in the first 2 weeks of December before the Christmas break. They are desperate to link Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump. Now, here's the thing. Republican candidates for president in the United States are rarely popular in Canada. But even though the Angus Reid poll shows most Canadians don't like him, more like him than like most American Republican candidates. There was an Abacus poll that showed 33% of Canadians want Trump to win. That's a higher percentage of the popular vote than Justin Trudeau got last election, and he's prime minister right now. So it's an odd strategy, and especially odd considering this. Let's say that it doesn't work, and he's not able to bring down Poilievre's voter support by trying to tie him to Trump. There's a very good chance Trump is going to win. Trump is leading in national polls, but he's also leading in all the swing states that matter, including ones he lost to Biden last time. So there's a good chance that come October, Trump is president-elect. Come January, Trump is the president. And if we go to October 2025 without an election, we're going to have 10 months of Donald Trump dealing with the Trudeau government that Trudeau has just spent time campaigning against. This is a bad strategy for Canada. If you think the protectionism's bad under Biden, and it's worse under Biden than it was under Trump, it will be even worse under a second Trump presidency that Justin Trudeau has just campaigned against.
Now, Brian, another way you say the Liberals are trying to taint Poilievre's image is by using ethnic politics. Apparently, the Trudeau Liberals are saying Pierre Poilievre doesn't support Ukraine, and we have a lot of Ukrainians who live in Canada, especially right here in Alberta.
Yeah, in Alberta, across the prairies, suburbs of Toronto, areas where the Trudeau Liberals are going to hope that they can squeeze out some votes. It goes back to this trade deal, the update to the Canada-Ukraine trade agreement. This is a trade agreement that Stephen Harper initiated, that the Conservatives backed, but they didn't back the update not because it said it would impose a price on carbon pollution or carbon pricing on Ukrainians, but because it would enshrine Canada's carbon tax in an international agreement. They said, we're not going to stand for that. You're playing politics. And the Liberals were playing politics doing that. But the Conservatives gave them an opening to say, you don't support Ukraine. That's ridiculous. Again, trying to tie it back to MAGA, because we know in the States, Republicans are increasingly not everyone, but a number are increasingly turning away against Ukraine. So now you've got Trudeau out talking to Susan Delacourt at the Toronto Star saying, oh, I talked to Zelensky and he noticed, and this is bad. They just keep coming back to this. They must be getting some traction with it because they keep coming back to it, but it's based on a complete falsehood. I will say the Conservative move did anger a lot of people in the Ukrainian Canadian community, but it doesn't change the policy at all, and I don't think it changes their support for helping Ukraine fight Russia.
Now, you may have heard that we had a bit of a grid emergency over the weekend here in Alberta on Saturday. We had to borrow electricity from Saskatchewan to help keep up with the demand when temperatures were hitting below minus 40 degrees here, Brian. Many Albertans had to cut back on electricity to avoid the rolling brownouts. That's something that I experienced when I lived east of Toronto in Ajax in the Durham region. Now, do you think what we witnessed here in Alberta will convince Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault that their green policies are maybe moving a little too hard and too fast?
Not for a moment. This is just more proof. Here's the thing with people that view climate as a religion rather than looking at it through a scientific lens. And I think it is a matter of faith for both Guilbeault and Trudeau. What you experienced is not proof that they're going too hard, too fast. It's proof that they need to go harder and that they need to go faster. And get your heat pump now. I know they wouldn't have worked in minus 40, but that's what they'll tell you. And so, yeah, watching, texts and social media posts from my friends, yourself and others showing, please unplug any unnecessary appliances, unplug your electric car. Look, I'm a believer that there's space for electric vehicles in the right circumstances. But you know what? When you're living in the prairies in minus 40, that's not it. Zipping around Toronto delivering Amazon packages in an electric powered van, I'm all for it. But there's a time and a place for these things. That's what Trudeau doesn't get. He wants one size fits all. He wants everyone to adopt his green religious fervor agenda. And this past weekend showed that that is not feasible right now. And Scott Moe made a valid point. He was sending electricity to Alberta that was coming from the natural gas power plants that they have. Scott Moe has told me about how they have been attempting to build out more wind capacity in Saskatchewan, but that they also need to build a natural gas backup. You need that, and the federal government's fighting them on it because they don't want any more fossil fuels going into the electrical grid. That's not reasonable. It's not feasible, but that's the sort of mentality that Justin Trudeau has. So I feel for everybody that threw that on the weekend, but you're not going to get any sympathy from the Trudeau government in Ottawa.
And I was chatting with our utilities minister, Nathan Neudorf, here in the province as well yesterday, and he said, you know what, renewables are good with wind and solar, but we do need to have them to supplement, not to rely on them wholly, because, yeah, we definitely need, the natural gas, also the coal-fired plants. Like Scott Moe says, that's how we sent the electricity to Alberta. It wasn't just natural gas, but the coal-fired plants as well.
And you know what? There's a great movement on cooperation among the provinces to build on small modular reactors. And I know one is about to be commissioned Out west, and I'm just hesitant to say, is it Saskatchewan or Alberta? I can't remember. One's just been announced. We're deploying them here in Ontario, and it was a move by Ontario, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick originally, Alberta joining later. A lot of excitement about this in terms of being able to generate clean electricity, no emissions, no pollution, as you get from the coal stacks. So, a lot of excitement and opportunity, not a lot of cooperation from the feds on that.
Yeah, apparently these modular nuclear plants with Capital Power and OPG in Ontario that they're combining, we're going to have 4 of them in operation by the year 2029 here in Alberta. So remains to see when that transpires here. Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us from Toronto.
Thank you.